Shaki may have just changed One Piece forever, and I'll be honest, the idea that we're gonna talk about today does make sense, but it's also like really controversial. Right now I'm somewhere between this is awesome or if this is actually how it's gonna end, I might end up hating One Piece. And once you've heard the final conclusion of this theory, you can then let me know if you love it or if you hate it. Shaki being the treasure of Hachinosu might be Oda hinting at what some people have been calling simp peace online. That is basically to say that every major conflict, the Void Century War, the First World ending, God Valley, etc., from each single era was started because, well, the boys loved a really pretty girl. But on top of just that, we also have to ask if Shaki is the real treasure of Hachinosu, could the One Piece itself? And in my mind, it actually probably goes even a little bit deeper than just that, because I would argue that Gloriosa might actually straight up showcase the bigger problem here, as she might share a very similar role in the story to IMU themselves. But let's start with Shaki here, because obviously I was not prepared for Oda to reveal that she is the crown jewel of Hachinosu that we've been hearing so much about. I don't know about you, but for me it was kind of set in stone that it would be a devil fruit or like, I don't know, a baby like Shanks or Buggy or Blackbeard even. To me, that kind of made the most sense, since the Rocks pirates were setting sail to retrieve that treasure, and if it was gonna be something like one of Rox's kids, or one of the fruits he definitely needs to defeat Imu, or something of that nature, that would make a lot of sense calling it a crown jewel. But looking back at the rest of the Loki, Harold, and Rocks flashback, which I guess it is now, this actually really makes a ton of sense. I was beating my head against the wall trying to figure out why in the world the Kuja tribe was now suddenly this super important part of the story, since, you know, they've always seemed like a cool addition that's not necessarily crucial. However, now with Shaki becoming the crown jewel and potentially revealing the whole plot, I can see why Oda has been putting them on such a pedestal recently. And if you're still doubtful if Shaki is the crown jewel still, you know, you might say the text is a little bit ambiguous, though it does say straight up the treasure of Hachinosu. I do think that looking back at chapter 1096, when the Roger and the Rocks pirates raid God Valley, it kind of almost guarantees that this is in fact what is happening here. I guess Ginny does send out a message about the devil fruits and such, but if I'm Roger and I hear that the crown jewel of Hachinosu has been stolen because that's what Ginny said, then I absolutely know what that means. Shaki has been kidnapped. Now Roger, out of all people, would obviously have known that she moved to Hachinosu, and honestly, when you look at the words that the crew says in regards to going to God Valley, it's kind of framed as if most of them were going there for Shaki, except for Kaido and Big Mom, who were aiming for their devil fruits here. Because Roger yells here, "It's been a whole year, do you have any idea how I felt all this time?" And then Scopper goes, "No special privileges for the captain here." Like, I kind of always read that as Rocks defeated Roger, but then that didn't really line up with what Scopper is saying here. But it does line up perfectly if they're talking about how hurt they were that Shaki went to Hachinosu instead of traveling with them. And it also explains Rayleigh's face and reaction here, which looks like he's totally over all of this, and we know how that story ended, right? And the Rocks pirates have had some very similar reactions, and it lines up even better, I'd say. Whitebeard is worried that Rocks will lose sight of their true goals, and then Stussy makes a weird remark that almost seems jealous. She says, "Newgate, not you too," and then Gloriosa calls her out for it, so that kind of sounds like everyone is there for Shaki, which again lines up with how 1157 describes the Rocks pirates altogether, who would do anything to protect her. Gloriosa wants to settle it once and for all, and I do think that that's just her beef with Shaki more than anything else now. And something else that comes up in chapter 1157 that caught my eye here was the interaction between Big Mom and Gloriosa. Quick shout out, by the way, to Oda for including Oven and Katakuri here. So cool, right? Love to see that they were just hanging out with their mom the entire time, being part of the Rocks crew, I guess. Cute attention to detail. But I actually really loved Big Mom as a character in this chapter. Like, Oda made her so emotive and pivotal, like, really cool addition for an already pretty cool character in my opinion. Anyhow, Big Mom and Gloriosa chatted up about how Shaki must have fallen in love, and that's why she left Amazon Lily just like Gloriosa did. We've already known about love sickness for a long time now, that being a disease that, you know, the absolute baddies of Amazon Lily can get if they fall in love with a man, and that's why they tend to isolate themselves away after that happens. If they don't, it apparently kills them, and this is what allegedly happened to Tritoma the missing Empress of Amazon Lily, who I still think has a good chance of, yes, being Luffy's mom, but hey, this is not what we're here for today. This time though, thinking about all this struck a new chord in my mind. Because love sickness does cause a problem, but what if it's not just the sickness that causes the Kuja Empresses to hide away on their islands? Think about it. If Shaki is at the center of God Valley, and this is foreshadowing about the truth of the Void Century, what if the Kuja hide away because they know that their empresses cause massive world conflicts, you know, throughout history basically? What if this sickness is almost something like an omen of destruction and war? And this is where my thoughts then about IMU finally popped in as well. You see, IMU is this figure shrouded in mystery and darkness, but like not that much mystery, because for years I've been an advocate now for the idea that IMU might be a woman who loved Joy Boy, and that's what caused the Void Century War to begin with. Personally, I think it could very much be someone possessing Lily's body, Joy Boy's true love potentially, since IMU has that big painting of Lily weirdly up in the flower room and is seemingly obsessed with Vivi, Lily's descendant, and even more recently we've now seen Gunko and IMU wear similar attire, and IMU possesses Gunko specifically during the Elbaf arc. So I don't know, but my theorist brain kind of thinks that this is less a coincidence and more of an I can only possess women bodies sort of power thing they've got going on there. And with that in mind, I kind of came up with an idea that I think could explain a lot of the endgame of the story. Because what if IMU was a member of the Kuja tribe and Nefertari D. Lily was also a member of the Kuja tribe before she then left to join Joy Boy, potentially marrying him and taking his name? Because we do know that Alabasta's really old, but we don't really know how long, Amazon Lily has existed to begin with. And all of this, for better or worse, could make a bunch of sense when you look at a lot of the connecting evidence for this. Take for instance the fact that IMU spends most of their time in the flower room in Marijua. Now of course historically flowers tend to be associated with femininity, but also in One Piece, that's what the Kuja tribe's entire deal is. In case you never noticed, all of the Kuja tribe members are named after flowers. And I can confirm this since one of my team members turns out to be a florist by day and a One Piece addict by night, so shout out to them. But seriously, they've got names like Sanderisonia, Poppy, Pansy, Cosmos, Daisy, and Marigold. And since I'm sure that someone's already typing that Shaki isn't a flower that they know, Shakuyaku's name is actually based on the Japanese word for the flower peony. So literally all of the Kuja tribe members that we know are named after flowers. IMU loves the flower room, and Lily is literally both the name of their island as well as, a lily, a flower, this flower. And you probably know that this idea isn't completely new or anything. I mean, me and some other people have theorized before that maybe Lily founded Amazon Lily, and I really think that this is starting to have some really strong legs with the Kuja being center stage in the story right now. And so what if the situation with Shaki is the same one as what happened with Lily during the Void Century? Classic Oda foreshadowing. So, instead of Gloriosa helping save her fellow Kuja, IMU went, a little bit psycho and caused a massive global war. So with that being said, Manu, stop what you're doing! It's me, the Fleet Admiral. Fujitora has really been putting me through some very serious swords training recently, but I still can't handle a sword like Alice Timesfield, the newest agent from Zenless Zone Zero. Allow me to talk about them. Zenless Zone Zero is an urban fantasy action RPG from Hoyoverse set in a post-apocalyptic setting, which I love as a part of the government. You get to take control of awesome characters, battle fierce enemies, and unravel the mysteries of New Iridu. Just like how I'm unraveling the mystery of why all these meteors keep crashing down wherever I'm trying to trade. Stop it. Alice Timesfield is the newest member of the Spookstack faction, a group dedicated to explaining unexplained phenomena. And despite being terrified of ghost stories, Alice is determined and fired up to uncover the scientific truth behind those mysteries. Sounds like you and your silly theory, Manu there, talking about your video. And also, when she hits the battlefield, oh boy, her obsession with symmetry and her noble background make her fencing style true art to behold as she dices up her enemies with sheer elegance. On guard! I don't have a sword, but you can imagine how badass it will look if I was using mine. So anyways, check out the game, pull Alice Timesfield as your newest agent, and get to exploring the world of Zenless Zone Zero. Link below. Back to you. Alright, well, sounds pretty fun. I'll give it a go, and with that, now back to the video though. Imu's reaction to the hockey knot is low-key a little bit sus as well, because what if all the panting and sweating is her just being, you know, hot and heavy in the presence of Joy Boy? Exactly, by the way, how the Kuja tribe women get when they see the person that they are mostly in love with too. Remember, Boa does the very same thing with Luffy, Gloriosa does that thing with Roger, so Joy Boy, Roger, and Luffy might all just be destined to get the Kuja tribe going, I guess. And love it or hate it, but as you'll see, I think there's a really good chance that this might have been what happened, because everything we know about Joy Boy does very subtly point at him just having some crazy game too. Like, I kind of wonder if part of the big issue during the Void Century was that Joy Boy, kind of like Roger and Luffy, was just a total player who could pull, and Lily seemed to have something with him based on the D initial and being the person who, you know, released the poneglyphs for him, but also Joy Boy had some interesting ties to the original Poseidon, the mermaid princess who, if fate would have it, was probably also a woman like Shirahoshi is. And low-key, it would just be hilarious if all of these great issues would have been caused by Joy Boy being a complete stud. Now, I do think that Imu may have fallen in love with Joy Boy, but he was head over heels for Lily instead. And if that were to be the case, I might have to go back on my idea that Imu is possessing Lily's body, and actually she instead wants to possess it, but can't. Which, if that sounds confusing, I'll explain in just a moment. So that might be why she wants Vivi so badly, since she's nearly identical to Lily, and you know, being inside of her body is what will let Imu do what she's always wanted to do, which is meet her love again. Now that last line of mine might have piqued some of your ears, and that's because it's the final line of the Third World Harley text. It says it right here, they will meet again, and you know, there is gonna be the Harley in every theater video going forward, you just know it. But this line has been the thing that's maybe been the single hardest to explain for anyone, because we've never really had a good explanation for who this could actually refer to. But what if instead in each single world of the Harley ends with they will never meet again, or they can never meet again because the lovers are separated before the end of the world? Again, love it or hate it, but that angle kind of works. I've been really hellbent on saying this line referring to gods or ancient weapons, but if it's two lovers that are separated by fate that just need to reunite, that totally lines up with the text and the major themes of One Piece, by the way. Need I remind you that the original test run of One Piece was called Romance Dawn, that the first chapter of the story is also called Romance Dawn, and apparently Luffy's big goal in the story is bringing the new dawn. So could the original Romance Dawn be Lily and Joy Boy during the Void Century? And waiting for Luffy at Laugh Tale is Joy Boy's greatest treasure, the love of his life, Lily? I do know that this sounds absolutely wild. Trust me, I didn't expect to be talking about Sleeping Beauty today either, but when you really look at the text, this interpretation does line up like uncomfortably well, I think. Shaki is the crown jewel of Hachinosu, their greatest treasure they need to protect. So what if Joy Boy's greatest treasure, the One Piece, was also his love for a person? Remember, Lily went missing right around the time that Laugh Tale should have become prominent, since it's Joy Boy's treasure according to Roger. And I've always kind of assumed that she was dead or possessed, but what if instead she was quite literally put on ice by Imu? I mean, we do know that they love freezers. Maybe Lily is stuck in a situation very similar to that poor big old straw hat and can't get out. You know, basically frozen and preserved in ice in a form of cryosleep, which, oh, look at that, we just got recently too with all of the Galela giants on Punk Hazard. And speaking of Roger, his reaction and what he says when he finds the One Piece in Odin's flashback would make so much more sense suddenly when you really look at it this way. Like, I'd lose my mind laughing if I was searching for this crazy powerful treasure and it turned out to be an absolute baddie frozen in ice or crystal or something. Not to mention that Roger quite literally goes, I wish I had been born in the very same era as you, in reference to Joy Boy, and that literally just sounds like a snarky and joking remark about how Roger might have also wanted to chase after Lily, you know, seeing that he was absolutely that type of man. After all, we do see that Roger was like all in on going after Shaki, since it almost seems like the reason that he went to God Valley to begin with was to save her. I think we gotta say it, boys, Roger is living that simp lifestyle, it seems. Now technically, mean, it doesn't have to be Lily herself, of course. Imu could still be possessing her body, might just be missing or dead or something, like wedding ring, a one-piece wedding dress or something like that. Don't love that idea. Or a metaphor for two separate people becoming whole again through this item. I gotta say, it would be quite priceless if the thing at Laugh Tale was just like an outfit that Imu wanted to wear when she was inevitably meeting Joy Boy again. Not that that is what I think is gonna be it, but you know, the concept is kind of what the Harley's alluding to. Two lovers meeting at long last again. So maybe Imu just thinks that she can loophole that by becoming Lily, maybe? I don't know. And funnily enough, I do think that this might actually also explain the whole Void Century and give us a frame of reference for what kingdoms and such people were actually in charge of. Like, Lily may have been the first original queen of Amazon Lily, isolating herself, who left to chase after Joy Boy, the original king of Alabasta, maybe? After all, Harold is a king that we see right now who sails the sea, so maybe Joy Boy did the same thing. He was the first pirate, right? Would explain this flashback a little bit better, and why Rox almost seems to think that Harold could be the next Joy Boy, which seems to be a little bit implied here, right? And then, after Lily and Joy Boy linked up, Imu may have then taken over Amazon Lily, but fell ill to the love sickness or something and had to leave, so she tried to get Joy Boy, struck out hard, and caused everyone to betray him. Because if she couldn't save him, no one could. And it would also explain that, you know, rivalry and weird obsession with Lily. But you might have noticed that this raises an issue, which is, why would Lily be allowed to stay a world noble? But I do think it still totally works. She was still the queen of Alabasta, and she'd still be Imu's sister, no matter how you cut it. So the way that Imu talks about her could almost be a mix of jealousy and annoyance at a family member who caused all these trivial problems in Imu's mind. I mean, it's a super complicated emotional place to be in if you're Imu, and if you did love the king of Alabasta, Joy Boy, probably wouldn't want to destroy his entire nation if you think you'll one day get him back, right? So Alabasta's entire existence might just be Imu having some weird, unresolved emotional baggage, maybe? So, with all of that being said so far, I kind of love this idea. And even if it's not the case, I do think that in some capacity, this torn apart romance angle is something that Oda is very clearly in some way, shape, or form playing with. But I do think it could go even further back than just that, and was Nika and someone else who had a love that got lost at some point? And once again, surprisingly, this would also make some sense if you take a look at the mural and the Harley text with the Kuja tribe background in mind. Because there's one really big stupid element of the mural that I just haven't been able to pin down at all, and I can't believe it's taking me this long to form this connection, but there's a literal giant freaking snake in this mural. The Hellflame Serpent has been a big thorn in my side for a long time, but if the Kuja tribe is the key to everything here, it does suddenly make a lot more sense, because it would tie together everything. The flower room, the Kuja, the Hellflame Serpent, you know, to the biggest and most annoying thing in the modern era, the Adam and Eve tree. Now, apologies for just throwing out a buzzword salad here, so, you know, work with me a little bit and I'll break them all down for you. The Kuja pirates are all big snake themed, but also flower themed. Imu hangs out in the flower room, and you know what else has key ties to flowers and snakes? Fruits. Perhaps it's the truth that Amazon Lily is the origin of devil fruits, and in the original first world, the Hellflame Serpent served as the guardian of this entire place. After all, the Kuja do be having a bunch of massive snakes everywhere. They basically worship them. But also, this threat has a much more obvious tie-in too, which is the Garden of Eden inspiration, a story about Adam and Eve, lovers who eat the forbidden fruit of temptation and are then cast out of heaven because they succumb to greed and temptation. So what if the whole story of the first world is this legend playing out in some way, shape, or form? Like, is that hard to believe? I think it could explain a bunch of really weird oddities in the Harley text, but most importantly, it would possibly also explain how Nika does finally play into all of this. Because there seem to be these weird ties to the Earth God, but also the Sun God, which is separately named from the sun in the text. Because the Harley text, especially in Japanese, refers to these two as being completely different entities and people, so I wanted to toss out an idea for you, and you can then tell me if you think this lines up or not. What if the Earth God is actually the Earth Goddess, and she harnessed the power of the actual Sun Goddess? I've been thinking about this for a long time, that maybe the Lunarians were tied into all of this, and what if the original Sun God was actually just the queen of the Lunarians with some big crazy flame that was super giga powerful. But then she got imprisoned by the Earth Goddess, and Nika was the one who tried to free the Lunarian queen from the clutches of the Earth God. And if we kind of want to keep the forbidden love angle going here, Nika could have been married or tied to the Sun Goddess, and he himself was a different god altogether at first. Now obviously the evidence for all this ancient stuff is pretty sparse in the story so far, but the Harley text has made me question the nature of the sun and the sun god for quite a while now. For instance, the sun god actually has way more connections to the moon when you really think about it than the sun, right? I mean, like Gear 5 appears during the full moon and is visually represented with it all the freaking time. It's also visually the very same thing as the Ming Sulong form, which, by the way, only appears during a full moon. So what if Nika wasn't the sun god, who is written in quotation marks in the text, by the way, but instead the moon god, reflecting his lover's light the way that the moon reflects the sunlight? Which then of course makes you wonder if Nika's lover, the sun goddess, was maybe sealed away from him by the earth goddess. If we take a look back at NL's cover story, we do know that the earliest civilizations of the sky races came from the moon first, and for some reason the sky race with the big flame on their back aren't the Sunarians, but instead the Lunarians, you know, the moon. And they have the white hair and everything, and this weird hiccup has always bothered me a lot, but it might have been Oda foreshadowing the deeper ties between the sun and the sun goddess and the moon and moon god Nika. So they will meet again in both the Harley and, by the way, Bing Sake, where it happens too, could quite literally be referring to the sun goddess and the moon god reuniting, and she could be what is sealed away at Laugh Tale for all that we know too. So Luffy and his moon god powers might have to line up with the sun goddess's power, and they can then together defeat Imu, the earth god, or ocean god, or whatever they are, right? And assuming that Imu might have been a Kuja tribe member themselves, if not their original queen, she would still be at the center of everything as a major problem. And she would have a really good reason to keep her family isolated and not become part of the world government, since their empresses always seem to cause such big world problems. So it might be that Imu's cycle of toxic relationships might be the key to understanding One Piece, and Shaki might have totally just blown that idea wide open with Oda thrusting it into our face. But if all of that isn't true, then the Forbidden Sun will need to come into play some other way, right? And while I do think that it's a Lunarian's big flame, there are some other really interesting options that it could be instead. And Luffy still needs to use whatever it is to save the world, right? So what could the eternal flame be? Well, check out this video right here where I explore all the answers to that question. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks to all the beautiful Patreons right here. Go check that out and let me know what you think in the comments. I'm preparing myself, but I hope it made sense.